بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وبارك على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد Alhamdulillah, in our previous lesson we were discussing some of the nawaqid al-wuḍū. So we concluded the discussion around the mas al-khuffayn, the chapter regarding wiping over the socks. And we mentioned in relation to wiping over the socks that within the permissibility of wiping over the socks is also a permissibility of wiping over, what else did we say? The turban, the imam. Now. And so it takes the same ruling, it says that it has the same conditions. Allah Ta'ala knows best. Thereafter, we went on to discuss the chapter pertaining to the nawaqid al-wuḍū and the nullifiers of the wuḍū. We mentioned some of the things that nullify the wuḍū. The first of the things that we mentioned that nullified the wuḍū is the kharij min as-sabilayn. And the kharij min as-sabilayn ala kulli hal. So that which comes or that exits from the front or the back passage. Naam, whatever that may be. And that was one of them. Thereafter as well, what else did we mention? Remember, from the things that nullify the wuḍū in the previous lesson.
Losing your awareness.
Losing your awareness now. So faqd al-aql. So losing your senses or your intellect or your awareness, any of those is correct. And we mentioned that there's three ways in particular where the person will have lost his senses, if you like. Three ways in particular. Sleeping is one. Intoxication. For this Ahmed there.
Ahmed, oh,
Yeah.
outside.
I think it's stopped working. So it's going to sleep, intoxication,
Insanity.
and insanity. Now, yeah, losing your senses in the complete sense. Now, we mentioned some detail in relation to the loss of your senses by way of sleep. And what was the detail in relation to that? After? So it's deep sleep.
So you're not in deep sleep. For example, you're in a car and you have a sleep, and then but you can still hear an individual, then you could also call you. Likewise, if you're standing.
Okay, so what's the significance of deep sleep?
If you're sound asleep and somebody wants to call you and you wouldn't hear them and be able to speak.
So that's how Shaykh ʿUbayd raḥimahullah has how he distinguished the deep sleep. But what's the significance of deep sleep itself? Now, so the reason why there's a distinction made for deep sleep is because the deep sleep is what is regarded as that sleep that causes you to lose your awareness, essentially. So a lighter sleep is not a sleep that causes you to lose your awareness, and so it wouldn't be a case where you lose your aql has gone at that point. So if that's the case, then we understand from that the individual would not have broken the wuḍū. Now, so this is why the distinction is made between the two, and this is why there has to be that clear distinction made between the two. Is that if the person is in a deeper sleep, then it's a case of they are not aware of whatever they're doing, and so in this scenario, then you'll say that they have broken their wuḍū. Now, as for the one that is in a lighter sleep, then this is not the case. So, what else was also mentioned but disputed as well from the things that break the wuḍū? Was mentioned but disputed. We haven't mentioned that yet. Now, so large amounts of bleeding, or large amounts of that which is regarded as being najis and it leaving the body. Now, other than the sibilain, other than the front and the back passage. So, and the example given for that was now blood or vomit as well as pus. Naam. And the Shaykh mentions, raḥimahullāh, that there's no clear text that indicates that large amounts of the pus or the vomit causes the loss of the wuḍū. Likewise as well, there's nothing to indicate the loss of blood is the causation of the loss of the wuḍū or the nullification of a person's wuḍū. Now, also going back as well to the mas'ala of the sleeping. Ibn Qudāmah raḥimahullah, he mentions إلا نوم يسير جالسا أو قائما. So he mentions a light sleep, whether you be sitting or standing. Now, if you be sitting or standing. Why does he specify here sitting or standing? Because, basically he, raḥimahullah, Ibn Qudāmah, at this point here, is making, indicating towards the fact that there is a call that says, regardless of however your awareness when you're sleeping, if you are sleeping whilst lying down, then it is regarded as being a deep sleep. So there is a call, there is a statement, and it says that if the person is lying down in a muttaja and they're in any form of sleep, then it's regarded as being a deep sleep. So he's indicating this particular point here. Why? Because he's mentioning that the significance is not with the position where the person is sleeping, whether they be sitting or standing. Or the significance really, or rather, afwan, he's almost agreeing with that position. So he's almost agreeing with that position of the one lying down is regarded as being the one that's in a deep sleep. Because he mentions sitting and standing, in opposition to that. So if the person's in a light sleep, then it must be that he's sitting or standing. However, the reality is that and Allah Ta'ala knows best, the significance is with the individual being in a light sleep, i.e. the state of the sleep itself. Because the thing that breaks the wuḍū is the fact that you have the zawal al-aql. Now, the thing that breaks the wuḍū is that the person's intellect has gone at that particular time. And anything in terms of their awareness has gone at that particular time. So due to that, we would say that the significance isn't with the position. However, no doubt, when it comes to this, the position, then when a person is lying down, then this is indication, but not an absolute proof that the person is in a deep sleep. But generally, if a person is lying down, they're going to be in a deeper sleep than a person that is sitting up. Allah Ta'ala knows best. So going on to mention some of the other nawaqid as well. Then we have وَلَمْسُ الذَّكَرِ بِالْيَدِ. And so then you have the mention of the touch of the private parts with the hand. Touch of the private part of the hand. And there are some opinions that differ in relation to this. From the positions, or from the statements and opinions in relation to this particular affair, is that it does not nullify the wuḍū. So if a person touches the private part, it does not nullify the wuḍū. And the proof which is used for this is the narration found in Sunan Abi Dawud, where it mentions وَهَلْ هُوَ إِلَّا بَدْعَةٌ مِنْكَ. Yani, it's not anything except that it's a part of you, an extension of you. I refer to the private part. And the reality is that in relation to this narration itself, you have a jama'ah from Ahlul Ilm that actually mentioned that this narration itself is da'if. From the Imam Shafi'i, raḥimahullah, and Imam Ahmad. So they mention that this narration itself is da'if. And the fact that it's mentioned in the Sunan of Abi Dawud doesn't now mean that it's a proof that it's sahih. Because Imam Abu Dawud, raḥimahullah, his manhaj anyway, his intent when collecting ahadith for his Sunan was that he was intended to collect ahadith which were mustadilla biha, ahadith which were used for proof of for particular fiqh opinions and opinions when it comes to ahkam, and not that his intent was to gather narrations which were sahihah. Naam. And so here is an example of that. That his inclusion of this hadith within his Sunan doesn't now indicate that this hadith is one which is sahih. Rather, it could be argued that he's included this hadith. Why? Because this hadith is used as a proof for a particular fiqh opinion. Naam. That opinion being that the touching of the private part does not break the wudu. So, likewise as well, some of Ahlul mentioned that this hadith itself, even if we were to say that the hadith itself was sahih, that this hadith is mansukh. That the hadith is mansukh, is abrogated. Thereafter, we have the opinion, the second opinion, and this is that it does break the wudu. It does break the wudu. And this is due to the hadith of Busra bint Safwan. Hadith of Busra bint Safwan. And the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam قال من مس ذكره فليتوضأ. That whoever touches their private part, then they must make or perform the wudu. And Imam Ahmad, raḥimahullah, includes this within his Musnad, and he mentioned that this is a hadith of sahih. This hadith comes after, in terms of in date, in terms of tariq, this hadith comes after the hadith which was mentioned previously. Naam. So the first hadith we mentioned, where there's discussion about whether it's sahih or not, this hadith comes after it. So what we understand from that is that if this hadith comes after it, then the hukum can be that it is mansukh, yani. And do you remember what we mentioned in relation to when we have two narrations, or we have two texts, let's say, and there appears to be a direct contradiction between the two texts. So for example, you have the first text here mentioning that it's the private part is an extension of you, and so I rather that it's nothing to a person in terms of tahara. Then we have this narration where it mentions that the person that touches it must make wudu. So there's a direct contradiction between the two narrations in meaning. أليس كذلك؟ طيب. So, what is the first thing you do when you have an apparent contradiction between two texts? What's the first thing you do? You attempt to do? You try to reconcile between the two. What's meant by that? When you say you try to reconcile between the two? نرجع إلى قول العلماء. نعم كلهم رجوع إلى قول العلماء. لكن كيف الجمع بين هذا وهذا؟ هذا هو. لكن كيف يكون الجمع؟ يعني الطريق الأول نريد الجمع بين النصين. طيب. كيف يكون الجمع؟ أو ما معنى الجمع؟ أو ما معنى الجمع قصدي؟ المعنى. What do we mean by reconcile between these texts?
Finding a common point or
Essentially, it's you're trying to find a way where this could be correct and this could be correct at the same time. Where this text, and so this is why we say that the contradiction is an apparent contradiction, but the reality is there isn't a contradiction, that they can both coexist, and they can both coexist, and ahkam for this and ahkam for this can coexist. Now, and so you may find that there's texts that apparently have contradiction, but the first port of call is to see if they can coexist. So if they can't, looking at close, yes and no. Why would you look at the time when it's revealed? No. So essentially what you want to do after that is look at what is referred to as the nasikh and mansukh. The nasikh and mansukh. So look at the one text that abrogates the other. Right? So you look at one text that may abrogate the other. It's not possible to reconcile between the two, so one may abrogate the other. But what does that need though? What do you need in order to do that though? You mentioned it. You need to know the timeline. You need to know when this text occurred and when that text occurred. How are you going to know this? How are you going to know the timeline? How do you know one thing precedes the other? Now, تتبع الرواة يعني أحيانا sometimes. So then you look at the narrator sometimes, yeah, but usually the indications in the matan rather than the rawa. The place where it's narrated. For example, one could be in Mecca, one could be in Medina. But how would you know? Because of the makan.
Looking at events that happen.
Nah, yeah, essentially. So you can't say the makan, but it would be more correct to say if the makan is an indication of a particular event. So, for example, they mentioned that they were in Hunayn, for example. So it's an indication that this occurred during the Battle of Hunayn, or this occurred at the time of Uhud. So this was at this particular time. Now, so they may mention the time or a particular event that occurred. So that event is indicative of the time that it occurred. How else can you also understand that one may abrogate the other? Jade, like for example, what do you mean? What do you mean it's mentioned in hadith? Now, so where you have a call which is sarih, an absolute call or statement from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where it mentions that this was allowed, but it's no longer allowed. For example, now, so it mentions in the absolute sense, the hukum was allowed, but it's no longer allowed. Now, so this is how you're able to distinguish this nasikh and mansukh. However, there may be a case where you don't have dates or nothing to indicate the dates. No.
Does the prohibition take precedent over the allowance or something?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. Prohibition wouldn't take precedence. Wallah. Naam. So now you don't have dates, for example. Then what do we do? Naam. Essentially, tarjih. A tarjih bayna nasayn. So you seek to find which of the two texts is stronger. And there's always going to be one text which is stronger than the other. Now, always going to be one text which is stronger than the other. Why? Because if we're looking at two hadith, for example, then one hadith is going to have one set of narrators, another hadith is going to have another set of narrators. And they're not going to be the exact same in terms of their strength. Now, an example, I can't remember the exact narration now, or the exact two narrations, but it's in relation to buyu', in relation to buying and selling. And there's a set of narrators that narrate from Hamad ibn Salama. Okay? All of them thiqat. All of them are trustworthy. Okay? Then you have another set of narrators that also narrate from Hamad ibn Salama. However, the two narrations contradict with each other. However, in the first narration, those that narrate from Hamad, they are from his khawas. They are from those students that were the closest to him, right? In the second narration, they were from those that were, again, his students, but not from the khawas. Naam. So then you would take, in this scenario, even though these narrators are all strong, because these ones are from those that took directly from, or they were from those that were known to be from the closest of the students to Hamad, then you take from this narration, because they had more malazima with him in that regard. Now, so it's a case of, even though in the face of it, both narrations all the narrators are strong narrators. Naam. However, there's more detail when you look further into the narrations. Naam. Allah. So, ala kullin, the significance with that, in relation to what we're discussing here, is that with the first narration where we see that there's a degree of a contradiction between the two, it falls down on two levels. Naam. The first level is that we say, the first narration, is that we say that this one is mansukh. We can say it's mansukh. Now it's abrogated by the second narration. As mentioned, the second one comes afterwards. Or, even if we were to say that there's some doubt on whether we could establish whether this one abrogates this one, then there's a discussion in relation to the strength of the narration, and no doubt the second narration is stronger than the first. And so the touching of the private, essentially, it comes full circle back to the ruling that the touching of the private part is something which breaks the wuḍū. Now it breaks the wuḍū. Allah Ta'ala knows best. Does that make sense, Ikhwan? I know it was a bit long-winded. It did show that the Shah working out, you know. This one for the maths teachers. It's the Shah working out. But inshallah, it makes sense, bismillah. So, likewise, we'll have the mas'ala after that, which is the mas'ala referring to touching the private part with the forearm. Now, touching the private part with the forearm. And in relation to this mas'ala, then this does not break the wuḍū, because it's not regarded as being from the yad in this regard, i.e. the hand, and then what is intended from the yad in the narration. Now, and there's a third opinion as well in relation to the touch of the private part, which is if it's based upon the person's intention. So if the person intended to touch the private part, then this is something which breaks the wuḍū. And something which is mentioned alongside that, within that particular qawl as well, that statement and that opinion, is that they will say that if the person touches the private part with desire, no, and this is, Allah Ta'ala knows best, similar, and it's derived from the ruling where they mention, and we'll come to it inshallah, where they mention the ruling of touching the woman with desire. So they derive this ruling from that one. That makes sense? Now.
This might be a stupid question, but does it essentially the touching include the indirect touch of your private part or the direct one?
Does it include, sorry, to include?
The indirect touch of your private part.
Indirect touch?
Yeah.
How do you mean that one?
You dress up and just you touch your body.
Now, so this is the discussion. So now you have three aqwal. One of them say, one call says ينقض الوضوء يعني بالإطلاق. Second one says لا ينقض الوضوء بالإطلاق. And the third says ينقض الوضوء بالقصد. نعم. So the third, they said ينقض الوضوء بالقصد. So the first, as we mentioned, is based, what they say, it doesn't break the wuḍū. It's based upon a narration, and this narration has da'f inside it, and Allah knows best. The second is that just they says it breaks the wudu al-itlaq, and this would include يعني عمدا or يعني على سبيل الغلط or يعني خطأ.
يعني هل هذا يشمل اللمس المباشر والغير مباشر؟
لبس مباشر بغير غائل قصدك؟
يعني لمس لو فرضنا انه لمسه يعني لمس غير مباشر لكن مع النية.
ايوه. ايوه بدون يعني بمعنى النية وبدون. ايوه. قلنا يعني بالاطلاق لما يسوي absolutely فينقض يعني حسب الحديث. لكن الثالث القول الثالث قول لا ينقض الوضوء إلا بالقصد يعني بالنية. فهذا القول الثالث. هذا القول الذي نتكلم عنه يعني الآن. So now the third, they say that it doesn't break the wudu except with intent. So you intend to touch the private part. And now, again, we say that this is based upon the hukum or the qawl which is taken from the touching of the woman, which we'll come to, where they say that, for example, touching a woman breaks the wudu. Naam, they say touching a woman breaks the wudu. Or they say it doesn't break the wudu. Or they say touching a woman with desire breaks the wudu. Naam. And so, those that say touching a woman with desire breaks the wudu, they say also that this is linked to touching of the private part of desire breaks the wudu. So they link the two, or they link the hukmain as one thing. Does that make sense? What? Jay. Well, we'll come to that masala in more detail, then we can discuss it further with Nillah. Now, thereafter, now we have the one that leaves the fold of Islam. Now, the one that leaves the fold of Islam. And the one that raises the fold of Islam, then this is also from the things that break the wudu. From the things that break the wudu. And so this, what is understood from this, is that the person states a kalima to kufr, yani a kalima which causes them to leave the fold of Islam. يعتقدها يعني باعتقاد يعني they have the creed in that which they're saying as well. So billah, someone states يعني something about the disbelief in Allah, but they believe that. And no doubt, this is something which will cause a person to leave the fold of Islam. Or they have doubts upon something which causes them to leave the fold of Islam. Each and every one of these is something which nullifies the wudu of that individual. And the proof which is used is the ayah where Allah Ta'ala states, لَإِنْ أَشْرَقْتَ لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ. And if you were to commit shirk, يعني, fall into shirk with Allah, worship other than Allah, then your actions and your deeds will be lost. And so your tahara, are you performing your wudu and you purifying yourself from, it's an action from amongst your actions. And ridda, يعني apostasy itself, in of itself is a hadath. In of itself, apostasy is يعني a nullifier and something which is of يعني impurity. Now, and so this is the example in relation to that, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. Thereafter, you have the mentioning as well of the akl in aklul lahm al-jazur. So the eating of the camel meat. Eating of the camel meat, and does this break the wudu? And the narration which is used as proof for this is the narration of Jābirī ibn Samurah أن رجلا سأل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن أتودع من لحوم الغنم. Where the man comes to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he asks, can we perform wudu due to the lahm al-ghanam? Of course, referring to eating the meat of the sheep or goats. قال إن شئت فتودع. If you intend to, then perform the wudu. وإن شئت فلا تتوضأ يعني. And if you intend and if you wish, then do not perform the wudu. So this is in relation to the lahm al-ghanam. If you wish, you can perform the wudu. And if you wish, you don't have to perform the wudu. نعم قال أنتوضأ من لحوم الإبل. And then he goes on to ask, do you perform the wudu from the meat of the camel? قال نعم توضأ من لحوم الإبل. He stated, yes, perform the wudu from the meat of the camel. This is a narration found in Sahih Muslim. This is a narration found in Sahih Muslim. And you have also hadith of Bara ibn Azib, which also indicates the same affair. And here, within this particular narration, is an indication of the import or the fact that eating the camel meat breaks the wudu. For indeed the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam commanded to perform the wudu. Commanded to perform the wudu if a person was to eat the camel meat. And I believe we discussed this previously, maybe when we was going through shurut al-salah. And we discussed the difference between the ghanam and the ibil. The difference between the ghanam and the ibil. And why some of Ahlul Ilm, they explain the difference between the two and why you would make wudu from one and not from the other. Does anyone remember what we discussed in relation to the two and the difference between the two? Why you make wudu if you were to eat goat or sheep? Why you wouldn't? You don't have to make wudu in that regard. But if you were to eat the camel, then why you make wudu? Now, it's about the places they dwell in. Now, the shayateen surround the dwellings of the camels. Now. And some people say that they were created from the fire, but the reality is that that which is apparent is that they're surrounded by the shayateen or the jinn. They're plenty. How do you know? What's the proof that we know this as well? Now. Now. في علاقة. نعم سنذكره إن شاء الله.
حتى لكن صح يورث الحقد.
أيوه هكذا سنذكر أيضا هذا أيضا. نعم لكن صح. نعم. So where were we? So we said the pen of the camel. What's the indication that we can't that the pen of the camel is surrounded by the jinn? No, I nearly gave it away. That the salah in the pen of the camel is not permissible. However, the other animals, no, you can. The pen of the goats, the sheep, is permissible to pray within that pen. So this is indication first, also that anything that comes from the excrement of the camel, or it's not the camel, sorry, the excrement of these animals that you eat is tahir. Because you're allowed to pray in that surrounding. Naam. So, going on to what our brother mentioned as well, Jazakallah khair, is that also when it comes to the surroundings of the camels, then this is indicative of, or this can be, is mentioned as well, that this is a reason for why the camels act the way they act, and that they take on have particular tasarrufat, behavior patterns, because of their surroundings. Naam, because of their surroundings. And so they're known to be harsh animals. And there's a link made between the two. Likewise as well, what some of the Ahlul mention as well is essentially, according to, and is linked to what we say, I guess, or saying that we have in English, is you are what you eat. Naam. And we understand that, or is mentioned rather, that some of the, if a person eats a particular meat, he can take on some of the characteristics of that meat that he eats. Naam. So he eats a particular meat. So if he eats from the meat of the camel, and the camel is known to have harsh characteristics, for example, naam, and to be quite abrasive, then this can be something that the person takes on from eating that meat. So, due to that, it is encouraged, or is commanded, that the person performs the wudu in that regard. Now, does that make sense? Jayyid. Thereafter as well, we have the mas'ala that the person تيقن الطهارة والشك في الحدث، أو تيقن الحدث والشك في الطهارة، فهو على ما تيقن منهما أو تيقن منهما. And so we have the example now, the one that has certainty. Naam, the one that has certainty that they perform tahara. So they're certain that they have purified themselves. Then they have doubt as to whether they have broken their wudu or not. Naam. In this scenario, the person goes back and they rely upon that which they have certainty of. Right? And the certainty in this scenario is what? Tahara. Now, so for example, the person, they remember in the morning, they woke up rather, and they made wudu. And it's in the morning. They made wudu in the morning, and they know, they vividly remember making wudu. They come to Salatul Dhuhr, and they can't remember whether they have broken their wudu at any point in that morning up to Salatul Dhuhr. Naam. In this scenario, the person, he relies upon that which he's certain of. What he's certain of is him making the wudu. Naam. The opposite is also true. That if the person is certain of the hadath, the impurity, so he's certain that he's broken the wudu, but he's not aware of, or he has doubt as to whether he purified himself, then he acts upon the certainty. Now, this can happen as well. So the person, in the same similar scenario, the person vividly remembers using the toilet. Now, the person vividly remembers using the toilet. However, he cannot remember, did he go afterwards to make wudu? So the last thing he remembers is using the toilet. He doesn't remember clearly whether he made wudu or not after that. Then he acts upon that which is certain, and that certainty is the fact that he broke the wudu. Now, the first is that he broke the wudu. So then in this scenario, he has to make wudu. Now, does it make sense? Jade. The final thing I want to mention today, inshallah ta'ala, is in relation to, as we mentioned, as some Ahlul Ilm, they mentioned, the touching of the women, and that this breaks the wudu. Now, touching the woman, that breaks the wudu. In this particular issue, mas'ala, there are three particular opinions. There are three opinions. The first of the three is what we've done it before, so I'm gonna ask, and then you have to answer. There's three opinions. We've done it before, and I mentioned it earlier today as well. So before that, let's go in some sort of order, inshallah. Before that,
Just touch
touching does what?
it definitely breaks the wudu.
It breaks the wudu, absolutely. Naam. So they say touching breaks the wudu, absolutely. Naam. So touching a woman breaks the wudu, absolutely. That's the first opinion. What's the proof for that they use?
The second hadith.
This-
What the seven commanded is touched by the partner.
No. No. Give you clues to ayah. أو لا مستم النساء. نعم قول الله تعالى أو لا مستم النساء. Alright, so you touch the women. This is the command. So this is the proof. Now I'm clear? طيب قول الثاني. It definitely doesn't. It definitely does not. Why? And what's the proof, sorry? Now, well, generally it mentions his wives. So the narration mentions that the Prophet ﷺ, before leaving the home, he would kiss his wives. By leaving home to go to the salah, he would kiss his wives, and then thereafter perform the salah. So, also, what's another proof that they have for that, which is a rebuttal of the first proof. Does the question make sense? How do they answer the first call? Now,
ربما أنها ليست أجنبية عليها. نفس المرأة الغير أجنبية.
that's a مرة غير أجلاء لا.
لأن الزوجة مش أجنبية الزوجة.
صح. لكن لا هذا ليس مراد القول ولا أعرف.
والله أعلم.
Sorry, narration of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam praying in the night prayer, and Aisha was in front of him and touches.
Now you can use that as a proof. But how do they answer the ayah? It's used for the first.
Do they say it's referring to intercourse?
Naam. So they mentioned that la mastum an-nisa, as mentioned in the ayah. The murad is not just majarad al-lams, just touching the woman. Rather, the intent is al-jima'. The intent is sexual relations, and this is what is intended by la mastum an-nisa. طيب, and then the third call with desire. Now they say with desire based upon what? Like, come on, give it. تفضل.
Is it the ayah again?
The ayah again. The answer I'm going to give you probably annoying. It's yes and no.
Is it the ayah with the understanding that we just talked about? The desire?
Yes and no. What did we mention about?
So the hadith from before, touching the private parts.
No. What did we mention about if there seems to be a contradiction between texts? What's the first thing you do?
صحة الحديث.
أول شيء الجمع حاول نجمع بينهما. So then they say that jam' between the two. So you have the ayah, mentions this, the touching the women. Then you have the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he kissed the wives before going to salah. So then they say that this was to make jam' between the two, is to state that it is touching with desire. Touching with desire, and this is where they try to make jam' between the two. However, Allah knows best. The stronger opinion is the second, number 2. The second. Why? Why would you say number 2? because of the action of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and more importantly,
No clear proof to say otherwise.
why? Yes, why?
Understanding of that, yeah. That,
Because the understanding of the ayah. Most importantly, the understanding of the ayah. Now, most importantly, because of the understanding of the ayah. That the correct understanding of the ayah is referring to a jima'. Now, so, because this is the understanding of the ayah, then there is no contradiction. There is no contradiction. So there is no need to try and harmonize between the two. Now, there's no contradiction. This is referring to yani sexual relations, and this one is referring to yani any form of touching, and this is permissible. Allah Ta'ala knows best, and does not break the wudu. No.
هذا يعني ملامسة المرأة الأجنبية ولو كانت مصافحة بغير النية
بغير
لا تنقض الوضوء.
لا تنقض ولا يعني هو آثم.
هو آثم نعم.
هو آثم، لكن من حيث النقض الوضوء يعني من ظاهر النصوص لا ينقض الوضوء. هذا الفعل لا ينقض الوضوء.
لأن في حديث يحرم نفس الأجنبيات.
من الحديث عفوا.
هناك حديث يحرم نفس الأجنبيات.
نعم، فمع هذا نفهم من هذا يعني أنه الذي يفعله مصافحة يعني بها، يعني هذا الفعل يكون فعل يعني محرم، يكون فعل محرم، لكن لا نقول يعني أنه من نواقض الوضوء. نواقض الوضوء شيء والفعل محرم شيء. قد يفعل، قد يرتكب في المحرمات كثيرة. نعم، الرجل أو المرء قد يرتكب في المحرمات كثيرة ولكن لا ينقض الوضوء مثلا. نعم، ف النواقض الوضوء لا بد من النص تدل يعني بالضبط يعني هذا يعني ينقض الوضوء، هذا يعني يلتزم منه من هذا الفعل الوضوء. نعم، فلذلك ما نستطيع أن نجمع بين النص والحكم الاحتياج للوضوء. From the brother was asking about whether touching the ajnabiyah, so touching the woman that you're not related to, whether this breaks the wudu. Naam. I said that individual in this scenario, then he is sinful. Naam, he's sinful in this regard, and it's mentioned that the individual in this regard is sinful. However, it is not mentioned about along with the things that break the wudu. It doesn't mention that this is the consequence of touching or shaking the hand of the woman that is not related to you. However, the person is sinful. So what was discussed is that a person may fall into sinful acts, but it doesn't now mean that because he's fallen into a sinful act that he's broken the wudu. Naam. The only thing we could say maybe from the sinful act that a person falls into that breaks the wudu is what? The greatest sinful act? Shirk, yani ridda, yeah. So the person leaves the fold of Islam. Then this is something which breaks the wudu as mentioned due to the ayah.
For the one who read
No.
we have two hadiths as well. One of them, if he go to Sahih, لم يقبل 40 يوما صلاة، هل يدخل في ناقض الوضوء مع شارب الخمر؟ هل هاتين يدخلون في نفس الردة؟ والله أعلم.
يعني الذي
ما يقبل 40 يوم ولا صلاة، هذا حديث صحيح.
نعم، هذا ما يكون بسبب الأجر للصلاة، لكن أنا لا أعرف يعني شيء بالنسبة للطهارة.
نعم. يعني
التعلق بالنسبة لهذا الحديث، يعني هذا الحديث متعلق في الحكم ماذا؟ بالحكم أجر للصلاة، لا يقبل صلاته يعني من حيث الأجر.
من أجر مش من طهارة.
لا طهارة شيء. نعم، والله أعلم. No. Yeah. So if we're talking about the one that goes to the soothsayer, for example, or the one that drinks the alcohol and then their salah is not accepted for 40 days, and from what's apparent in this narration referring to the 40 days is not referring to anything that in regards to the nullifying of the purification or the state of purification. However, what we do understand is that this affair of it not being accepted is in relation to the ajr, the reward. The person cannot be rewarded for that salah for the 40 days. He's still commanded to pray the salah for those 40 days. He's still blameworthy he prays the salah for the 40 days. And that's the uquba for such an individual. Now that's a punishment for such an individual. That the person that doesn't pray the salah, he's still blameworthy for it, and is punishable for not praying the salah. But if he does pray the salah, which is upon him to pray, he's not rewarded for it for that period of time. وَيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ. Allah protect us. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بارك الله فيك. نعم.
If somebody was to wipe over the khuf and is still in a state of wudu, but then they change their socks, does that break the wiping of the socks?
So, you said he's in the state of wudu
He's in a state of wudu,
and he wipes the socks.
he wipes the socks, but then he
Change the socks. No,
does that break the must?
no. That's all you're new around here. We discussed this last week. Now. What did we discuss?
No, he still has wudu.
He still has wudu. Why?
But I think his opinion that I listen to Abdul, he said only one prayer after that he can allow.
No, there's a opinion that it breaks the wudu altogether.
Yeah,
No.
but only one prayer after that.
No. Allah. But from al-Zahir al-Qawl, that al-Zahir is that he's still in the state of tahara. Why though?
Because he's not the original one. He
It's
hasn't
not a nullifier of the wudu.
It's not another part of the wudu.
No, but I mean the must does break the must, not the wudu, not the tahara, but the must.
No.
Puts on a new pair of socks.
No, because the mash is for that period of time. The period is stated,
Okay.
and it's not muta'alliq with the clothing. The mash is just for the period of time. That's what's mentioned, the period of time. So as long as he fulfills the conditions, then he can still wipe over for that period of time. Anyone remember the conditions were for the wiping?
You put them on whilst in the state of tahara.
Put on while it's in the state for tahara.
It has to be in the time period
Ha-
where the muqim and the traveler.
Yeah, so you can only do it for a set period of time. If you're muqim, 1 day, 1 night. Traveler, 3 days, 3 nights. Now,
Major impurities. Yeah.
It's only for minor impurity.
Yeah, only for minor.
only for the minor impurities,
And it has to be above his ankle.
and the sock has to be above the ankle. Now, so in this scenario, if that's all fulfilled, it doesn't matter how many times you change your socks.
Do some of the ulama not mention that even if the khuf is below the ankle, you can still wipe over it? Still
Some mention, but from what's apparent, it has to be first of all, it has to be considered to be a sock, and it has to cover the ankle. Why? Because it's covering that which you're wiping in place of washing, and the washing is up to the ankle. Now, جزاكم الله خير. بارك الله فيكم. صلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بارك الله فيكم.